In July 2026, a highly anticipated Indian film premiered on a major streaming platform. Within just 48 hours, it was pulled from the service without any clear public explanation. No court order was issued. No official government statement detailed the specific reasons. It simply vanished. The movie, titled Satluj, starred one of India's most beloved celebrities and was based on events that took place roughly 3 decades ago. Before its digital release, the film had already spent years in limbo. The country's censor board had reportedly demanded over 120 modifications to the script and visuals. The filmmakers refused most of them and eventually abandoned a traditional theatrical release altogether. When it finally debuted on over-the-top platforms, uncut, it garnered millions of views in just 2 days. But the moment it was removed, a peculiar phenomenon occurred. It became a global talking point. Copies of the film flooded private messaging apps. Public screenings started appearing in villages and towns. The ban did not silence the conversation. Instead, it amplified it into a worldwide debate about history, memory, and freedom of expression. So, what is this film actually about? And why does a story set 30 years ago trigger such a powerful reaction today? Let's examine the facts, the history, and the psychology behind the Satluj phenomenon. Satluj is a biographical drama. It tells the story of an ordinary man named Jaswant Singh Khalra. In real life, Khalra was not a politician, a soldier, or a revolutionary. He worked as a bank clerk in the city of Amritsar. His journey into activism began for a very personal reason. A friend of his disappeared. When Khalra started asking questions, he uncovered a much larger pattern. During the turbulent 1980s and 1990s, a period of significant unrest and conflict in the northern Indian state of Punjab, numerous young men went missing. Khalra began documenting these cases. He went through municipal records, death certificates, and cremation registers. His research led him to compile documentation on approximately 25,000 cases of unrecorded and illegal cremations. He alleged that these individuals had been picked up by security forces, killed outside the legal framework, and their bodies disposed of without informing their families. Khalra took his findings public and even addressed international bodies about his discoveries. However, in September 1995, he was abducted from outside his home. He was never seen again. His mortal remains were never recovered. Later investigations, including one by India's premier federal investigative agency, confirmed the essence of Khalra's documentation. In subsequent years, several police personnel were formally convicted by Indian courts for his abduction and murder, with sentences later enhanced to life imprisonment. In the movie, the lead actor portrays Khalra's transformation from a quiet civilian into a relentless investigator. While many key historical figures are depicted, certain characters are fictionalized or represent composite figures to drive the narrative. The film focuses on the emotional toll of his mission and the legal battles fought by his family for justice. The film's director has repeatedly stated that the project was never about political allegiance, but about exposing documented human rights violations. However, when a story challenges the official narrative of any period in history, it is bound to stir controversy. Why does a historical drama, based on events from 30 years ago, trigger such a fierce reaction in the modern digital age? There are several psychological factors at play. First is the Streisand Effect. This is a well-documented phenomenon in which attempting to hide or suppress information actually makes it more widely known. The sudden removal of Satluj from its streaming platform instantly turned it from a simple movie into a cultural artifact. People who had never heard of Jaswant Singh Khalra were suddenly curious about him. The attempted suppression created a massive vacuum of information that the public rushed to fill. Second is collective memory and trauma. The events depicted in the film touch upon a period of intense societal upheaval. For many families in the region, this is not just history. It is an intergenerational wound. Thousands of families lost relatives without ever receiving closure. A film that revisits this chapter, regardless of its cinematic merit, has the power to reopen deep-seated emotional scars. When a community feels that its lived experiences are being questioned or erased, the act of watching the film becomes an act of remembrance and validation. Third is the nature of censorship itself. When a creative work is blocked without a transparent and legally justified public process, it breeds distrust. The removal of the film happened through an administrative review process that bypassed the standard judicial oversight typical of cinematic certification. This lack of clarity often leads to speculation. Audiences naturally begin to ask what exactly is being hidden and why it is considered too dangerous to view. This uncertainty fuels even more public interest. Fourth is the question of identity and truth. For many, this film represents a documented historical record. The refusal to allow public access to this record, after years of legal battles and court convictions validating the core facts, creates a paradox. When established historical facts meet contemporary censorship, it raises uncomfortable questions about how societies choose to remember their past. To fully grasp this controversy, one must understand the historical timeline. During the 1980s and 1990s, a separatist movement demanding an independent state emerged in Punjab. This led to a prolonged and violent confrontation between militants and security forces. The conflict resulted in thousands of casualties on all sides. As the crackdown intensified, various human rights organizations reported allegations of arbitrary arrests, enforced disappearances, and extrajudicial actions. Amid this chaos, Jaswant Singh Khalra began his research. He meticulously went through local administrative records. His core finding was the existence of a large number of illegal and unrecorded cremations of individuals whose families had no knowledge of their fate. He estimated this number to be around 25,000. Khalra was abducted in September 1995. His family filed a habeas corpus petition in the Supreme Court, which ordered an investigation by the Central Bureau of Investigation. The investigation corroborated Khalra's broader claims. In a landmark verdict, courts in India convicted several police officers for the abduction and murder of Khalra. Their sentences were later increased to life imprisonment by a high court. The film project itself was announced years ago. It faced multiple rejections from the censor board, which reportedly demanded numerous cuts. The board is said to have objected to the use of the protagonist's real name and to specific location references. After failing to secure a theatrical release, the makers opted for a direct-to-digital premiere. Upon release, it was made available globally, but within 2 days, the streaming platform voluntarily pulled it in India, citing current developments and security-related concerns, even though no formal judicial ban was ever publicly declared. Now let's separate widely circulated claims from documented evidence. One common claim is that the film is historically inaccurate and spreads separatist propaganda. The evidence suggests something more complex. While cinematic liberties are always taken in biographical films, the foundational elements of the plot are rooted in documented court cases and the findings of the Central Bureau of Investigation. Courts have formally recognized the illegal nature of the events depicted. The director has maintained that the narrative focuses on the human rights aspect rather than any political ideology. International critics have acknowledged the film for its storytelling rather than dismissing it as pure propaganda. Another claim is that Jaswant Singh Khalra was aligned with militant groups. The evidence does not support that conclusion. Khalra was an ordinary civilian and a bank clerk by profession. His investigations began because of the disappearance of a personal friend. There is no documented evidence presented in court that he actively supported any militant organization. His work focused on documenting human rights abuses against civilians, and the Federal Investigative Agency confirmed his findings regarding the unrecorded cremations. A third claim is that the figure of 25,000 is a gross exaggeration. Here the evidence shows that the number was Khalra's own estimate, derived from cross-referencing municipal cremation records with missing persons reports. While the exact number remains subject to historical debate, the broader pattern of extrajudicial killings and unrecorded cremations was validated by the federal investigation ordered by the Supreme Court. The legal convictions of police personnel for Khalra's murder further confirm the core truth of his research. Another argument is that the ban was necessary to maintain public order. However, the film had already cleared the standard certification process for digital release. Its removal came later, following an administrative review under digital media rules. No public court order was presented to justify the takedown. At the same time, the platform continued to host numerous other films dealing with sensitive historical and political subjects. This selective action, without transparent judicial oversight, has led to accusations of arbitrary censorship rather than a clear and consistent policy. Finally, some people argue that this is ancient history that should simply be forgotten. Yet the evidence suggests otherwise. The legal cases surrounding these events were resolved by Indian courts as recently as the mid-2000s. The families of the victims never received adequate closure, since many bodies were never recovered. More importantly, the sudden censorship of the film itself proves that these events are not considered ancient or closed by the authorities. Suppressing a film about documented and court-verified history transforms it from a historical record into an ongoing political and social issue. So, what is the real story behind the Satluj controversy? It is the story of a bank clerk who dared to ask difficult questions about human life. It is the story of thousands of families who spent decades seeking the truth about their loved ones. And it is the story of a film that took years to fight bureaucratic hurdles, but only 48 hours to be taken down by its distributor. Whatever one's personal opinion may be about the film's artistic merit or political leanings, one fact remains undeniable. The attempt to remove it from public view has accidentally transformed it into a global symbol. It has become a case study in how the internet reacts to censorship, how communities preserve collective memory, and how history refuses to be buried. As the lead actor of the film noted, the story has already been delivered. And in the age of global digital connectivity, once a narrative is released, it cannot be fully contained. The film may be off the platform in one country, but the conversation surrounding it has gone worldwide. What do you think? Should historical films like these be available for public viewing, or is censorship justified for security reasons? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy deep dives into cinema and society, consider subscribing to Ninth Reel.